Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unraveling a deeply chilling maritime mystery. We're going to dive right into a documentary-style analysis of a state-of-the-art vessel that literally vanished beneath the waves, taking its darkest secrets down with it. We'll break down exactly what happened that night, step by step, using the hard data and evidence left behind.
Let's kick things off with this staggering number, 1,400. We're talking 1,400 feet straight down into the freezing abyss. That is exactly where a perfectly upright, modern ship sits today, just resting quietly at the bottom of the ocean, hiding a fatal secret about its final moments.
Section 1. Journey of the Queen. To truly understand how this whole tragedy unfolded, we first need to look at the peaceful, perfectly normal beginning of this voyage back on March 21, 2006.
And looking at her specs, it's easy to see why she was the absolute pride of the BC Ferries fleet. The MV Queen of the North was a massive, incredibly powerful vessel. We're talking two 16-cylinder diesel engines cranking out over 15,000 horsepower, which let her cruise at 40 kilometers per hour. She could comfortably carry up to 650 passengers. But on this particular trip, a casual spring break getaway, there were just 101 souls on board for what should have been a totally routine 17-hour run from Prince Rupert down to Port Hardy.
Now, the environment they were sailing through along the British Columbia coast is, well, visually stunning, but it's notoriously difficult to navigate. It's basically a giant maze of narrow, rocky channels and waterways. Making it through safely requires constant, absolute vigilance. The crew literally has to execute precise, frequent turns just to avoid the rocky islands scattered all over the route.
Section 2. The Midnight Collision. Let's look at how this peaceful spring break trip morphed into an absolute nightmare. The timeline of the command shifts really sheds light on how the ship was being managed that night. For the first hour, veteran Chief Captain Colin Henthorne was personally commanding the vessel. He then handed things over to Second Captain Kevin Hilton, a guy with 25 years of experience under his belt. But as the night deepened and the senior captains went down to rest, command was eventually passed down to Fourth Captain Carl Lilgert, with Quartermaster Karen Bricker physically at the wheel.
Okay, let's zoom in on this incredibly crucial moment. Right before a really complex four-point turn near Saney Point, Fourth Captain Lilgert radioed Marine Traffic Control. And Control explicitly warned them, hey, there's a small boat ahead in your path, moving slowly. Watch your speed and heading. They were approaching a very difficult intersection where they needed to carefully, gradually turn left to stay on a safe course.
But shockingly, they didn't make that turn. Instead of executing that crucial left pivot, this massive ship barreled straight ahead at full speed right into the rocky shores of Gill Island. The impact was deafening. Jagged rocks tore right through the ship's hull, and freezing ocean water started flooding the lower decks almost instantly.
Woken up by the massive crash and the terrifying sound of the hull tearing open, a stunned Chief Captain Henthorne rushed up to the bridge. They threw the engines into reverse, but honestly, it was far too late. The ship was already heavily listing to one side. The captain's heart must have just stopped as he realized his vessel couldn't be saved. He grabbed the PA microphone and delivered this chilling final evacuation order. Leave everything behind and head to Deck 7 immediately. The ship was going down.
Section 3. Heroes of Hartley Bay. As the ship plunged into the pitch black, a real glimmer of hope emerged from the most unlikely of places.
I want you to notice this stark contrast. On one hand, you have an absolute disaster. 101 passengers and crew forced into the freezing, dark ocean, with the ship's bridge crew shockingly unable to even give Marine Traffic Control their exact coordinates. But on the other hand, you have this incredible rescue effort. A tiny nearby village called Hartley Bay, with just 200 residents, heard the desperate distress call over the radio. Within 20 minutes, they mobilized completely, arriving in their personal fishing boats to pull survivors right out of the freezing water.
And you know, the incredible compassion of the Hartley Bay villagers didn't just stop at the water's edge. They took these freezing, traumatized survivors right into their own homes. They gave them warm food, dry clothes, and in just a beautiful touch of pure empathy, they left their personal cell phones out on the tables so survivors could immediately call their families to say, "I'm alive." They literally turned a near-total disaster into a profound story of human warmth.
But despite that heroic, lightning-fast rescue, a painful reality began to set in the next morning. Captain Henthorne kept counting the survivors, and the numbers just weren't adding up. When police investigators finally finalized the list, the heartbreaking truth came out. 99 people were rescued, but 2 passengers, Gerald Foisey and Shirley Rosette, were missing and presumed lost forever to the sea. So this brings us to the core mystery of our explainer today. When questioned later, the two officers at the helm claimed they actually had executed the turn as planned and simply didn't know how they hit the rocks. Investigators knew they had to be hiding something. I mean, how do you prove it when all your evidence is sitting at the bottom of the ocean? How could a crew truly not know what caused a modern, technologically advanced ship to crash so violently?
Section 4. The Deep Sea Investigation. Let's dive down and find the forensic evidence buried beneath the waves.
Since the officers on duty were being really vague and evasive, probably to protect themselves, investigators realized they desperately needed the ship's mechanical memory. So they executed this painstaking 4-step deep-sea recovery mission. They deployed a remote-controlled ROV submarine 1,400 feet down, carefully navigated the dark, sunken corridors of the ship, and actually extracted the main computer hard drive to bring it back to the surface.
Now, what they were specifically hunting for on that waterlogged hard drive was the ECS, or the Electronic Chart System. You can think of this as the digital navigation brain of the ship. It meticulously records precise speed, heading, and location data in real time. Basically, it's the ultimate, irrefutable mechanical witness to exactly where the ship went and what the crew was actually doing up there. And wow, the downloaded data vividly and tragically laid out the truth. It proved the officers were straight up lying. The ECS showed total human negligence. The crew was completely distracted, likely engrossed in conversation or just totally ignoring their instruments, and they completely failed to execute a basic necessary turn. They literally sailed straight ahead into the rocks without even a slight attempt to steer away. If they had paid even a fraction of attention, they could have easily avoided the whole thing.
Section 5. Aftermath and industry changes. Let's see how this incredible deep-sea revelation changed maritime travel forever. That undeniable digital evidence led to some severe, immediate consequences. Chief Captain Henthorne, Second Captain Hilton, and Quartermaster Bricker all lost their jobs. But for Fourth Captain Carl Lilgert, who was the one actually in command at the moment of impact, the consequences were criminal. He was held fully accountable for that fatal lack of attention on the bridge, convicted of criminal negligence causing death, and sentenced to 4 years in prison. To make absolutely sure a disaster born of simple distraction could never happen again, the industry implemented rigid new protocols. They mandated 3 crew members on watch duty at all times, including one person whose sole dedicated job is just to look out the window. They established far stricter passenger logs so crews always know exactly who is on board. And crucially, they mandated voice data recorders, or VDRs, on all ships to capture bridge audio in case of any future incidents.
But amidst all that accountability, there was also some highly deserved recognition. The 200 villagers of Hartley Bay, who selflessly rushed their little fishing boats out into those dark, freezing waters, were honored with the Governor-General's Commendation for Outstanding Service. That's one of Canada's absolutely highest recognitions for life-saving actions. Their heroism really remains a legendary beacon of hope in what is otherwise a very dark story.
Meanwhile, the true human cost of that night's negligence is memorialized right at the site of the collision. A memorial cross now proudly stands on the jagged rocks of Gill Island. It serves as a permanent, solemn tribute to Gerald Foisey and Shirley Rosette, the 2 passengers whose lives were so tragically cut short.
So, I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. The MV Queen of the North was a powerful, highly advanced vessel, yet it was brought down by a totally simple distraction. No matter how advanced our technology gets, we're still relying on human focus at the end of the day. So what happens when that focus breaks? How do we safeguard ourselves against the most unpredictable, dangerous variable of all? Ourselves. Definitely something to think about the next time you board a ship. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.